listening to the Making a Multi-Million-Dollar Med Spa podcast, where we have real conversations about what it takes to run a successful business. Thank you for joining us as we showcase and share our day-to-day successes and, even more importantly, failures and mistakes, and host some of our peers, colleagues, and other experts in the field. Welcome back to the Making a Multi-Million-Dollar Med Spa podcast. This week's guest, Erin Hennessey, a longtime Mint client and friend, and the owner of Blush Aesthetics in Toledo, Ohio. Tune in as we chat about what she's excited about in the industry, the importance of investing in training and education, and the treatment she can't live without. Just a little PSA. If you're driving or listening to this episode while doing something else, you may want to pause and save until you have access to pen and paper, because Erin walks us through all the details of how she does her Forever Clear treatments, and you definitely want to take notes. And I'm so excited on this episode to have Erin Hennessey. She's the owner of Blush Aesthetics, which is a clinic in Toledo, Ohio. And we've been friends for quite a few years. It's been about 5 years, I would say.
Probably 5 or 6 years, because we started kind of doing some market analysis in 2015. And I feel like it was the end of 2015 that we kind of took the plunge and then opened, our doors in 2016. So
yeah, so I'm excited to have you in business for almost 5 years then.
Yes.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah. And so we've kind of gone on some journeys together, speaking at events together. And Erin is one of my all-time favorite educators. So, she does a really amazing job of educating her team, but you'll see her throughout the industry at AmSpa and different meetings, Sciton meetings, sharing, what she's learned, which I think is so important. And so few people either make the time to do or want to do. And so, we're excited to have you today, Erin. So, I think just kind of getting started, one of the points of having some of our friends from across the country get on is to share your experiences. There are so many clinics opening up now. And really, I've been in this industry for 20 years and I feel like there are ups and downs of it. But for the most part, it's been like this continual growth in our industry. And yet it still feels like there's so much growth to be had. So having you on to just share your experiences over the last few years and helping our clients to avoid some of the mistakes that I've made or you've made or we've made along the way. And then just kind of any tips. So maybe just starting out with what really excites you right now in the industry?
So I think that one of the things that's really exciting right now is that we are keeping patients out of the operating room for a period of time. So, there are folks that want to change, maybe improve something about their skin. And in the past, it would have been something that you needed to engage in a facelift or, complete resurfacing under anesthesia, different things like that. And now we have these amazing, more non-invasive, I would say, procedures that folks can do with maybe a week of downtime instead of 2 weeks to a month of downtime, that are preventing aging, kind of turning back the clock a little bit for them without them having to undergo the risks of general anesthesia. Certainly, that's not everybody. There's always a place for everything, right? But I think we have so many patients, at least in our practice, that say, I don't want surgery. So what can I do here with you guys that can get me, more to my goal? I know that it's not going to be 100%, but what can you do that gives me 20%, 60%, 80% improvement in my concerns? And we can do that now, which is really exciting.
I love it. I agree 100%. And I think, there are so many things that even for someone who's 50 years old and has never had a procedure before and looks 60 can do in terms of multiple visits to the clinic to get these amazing results without having to go under the knife. And then also her daughter's coming in with her. We have those younger clients, like mom and daughter are coming in together, and daughter's starting so much younger that I feel like these kind of more mild treatments, along with some injectables and sunscreen, of course, really can help them do that, be able to stay out of the sun. So anything else that kind of pops up that you feel like, oh, I'm so excited about, or this is coming, or I'm researching this, or anything that you're currently looking into to add to your clinic?
I'm really hoping that someone comes out with two different things. I feel like there's two needs that aren't being met well just yet. The first is skin tightening. I think that if we can come up with a way to get a really amazing improvement with skin tightening, that will be far and away our most popular treatment.
I
Everyone
agree.
has skin laxity, and there just hasn't been anything yet. We have things that will make incremental improvements, but nothing that's that like wow home run factor. So I think skin tightening is one. The second is that I know there is someone out there looking for a way to reduce white and gray hairs. I know
Oh,
there's somebody out there who's like postmenopausal and like totally gets it, and they're working on trying to find a way to get hair reduction with white and gray hairs, because we have, so many women who come in and they're like, oh, I hate this hair on my chin, and they feel so self-conscious about it, and I'm like, girl, everybody has hair in these places. Like, we're all, kind of on some hormonal journey in some aspect of it, and have unwanted hair growth in places. And so by the time it gets to white or gray, we don't do as good of a job of grabbing that hair and being able to reduce it. And so it's so disappointing for some people when we're doing a consultation and they say, yeah, most of them are gray or most of them are white. And I'm like, we're going to find something for you. I don't know when, but we're going to find something.
Saiton, are you listening?
Right. I'm like, Mayday, Mayday.
Yeah.
Gap in care here.
Oh, well, skin tight. It's interesting that you said that, because yesterday we started demoing a new device that's coming out on the market. So we'll have to connect about that this weekend when we see each other. But word is out that it might be better than what we currently have, and faster and a little bit less expensive for us as businesses. So I'll be interested to see if that works. But we'll get into that, and if that does work for us, then we'll definitely be talking about that on the podcast in the future. So speaking about treatments, what is a treatment that your business or even you personally could not live without?
So for me, it's Forever Clear BBL, like hands down. And that's just me personally. I think that probably for my patients, I would say that's Halo, because it does so many things. And I'm not saying that Halo is not one of my absolute favorites, but suffering with adult cystic acne, Forever Clear was a game changer for me. I tried everything. I was on Accutane 3 times. I was on every antibiotic, every topical therapy. If it was out there, like you name it, and I tried it. And so when I talk to my acne patients and I start talking about like that moment of desperation when you're online and you're trying to look for just anything that will help you, you're like, acne's been around for so long. There has to be something that will help me. When I think about that, and when I say that, you see something in their eyes change, where they're like, oh my God, like she's been where I am. Like she's done this. She gets it. And I do, because it's a very personal level for me. I had terrible adult cystic acne after I had my kids, and it's embarrassing. I feel like your self-confidence takes a nosedive, and I'm in skin. I work in skin. Like, I can't, go around to patients and say, I can help you with your skin. And they're looking at mine going, oh, honey, you might need to help yourself first. So it was one of those treatments that I was introduced to that I started getting. And it's one of those things I'm almost like, okay, I don't know that I can ever live without it, because I know when I'm due for an additional treatment. So I went through the series of, it took 8 for me. So I tell people it's usually a series of 6 to 8. And after 8 treatments, really maybe once every 3 months, I lay down on that bed and I make a point of it. It's on my calendar. Like, there are very few things that I am absolutely adamant about, getting, but that's one of them.
Okay. So I'm going to have you walk us through this, because with all the clinics that I train, it is shocking how many of them do not utilize this treatment. And so maybe just like step by step, what does your Forever Clear look like? I mean, super detailed, because I think that this is something that really will help so many people, and to hear your personal story, but then to know this is something that you're offering on a regular basis. I mean, do you follow the Saiton protocol? What does that look like? What do you, how often are you doing these treatments? The package you mentioned, is 8 treatments, and then you put together a maintenance. So kind of just walk us through that, and even include what you charge. I think that would be so great.
Absolutely. Okay. So I will say that it's evolved over time. What I started doing right when we first started out is not what we do today. So I'll say that
Isn't that always the case though?
always, always. So we started out doing the protocol that was set in the machine, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. But it's spicy. I mean, if you have a teenager in your chair, that may not be like fully invested. And I'm thinking about my teenage boys where their acne bothers mom more than it bothers them. And maybe their sister's getting married or they have a family event or something like that. It's not going to be something that they're going to come back for if it's painful. So that was one of the first, I think, barriers that we dealt with was the discomfort. I will sit and tolerate just about anything if you tell me it's going to fix something I don't like, but not everyone is like that. So we first started out doing, Dr. Bitter's protocol, the Saiton protocol, and we just noticed that there were a lot of people that couldn't tolerate the treatment well. And tolerability is one of those things. I mean, this is their first appointment with us. This is their first experience with us. And if it's not a good one, they're not going to come back. And we're asking them to invest in a series of 6 to 8. And so if after the first one, they don't want to come back, that's going to be really challenging. So I started, talking with people like Erin Blackwell in Atlanta and saying, how do you do this? Because here's what we're struggling with. And that's what I love about, the Saiton summits and events like AmSpa, where you're getting together with people in the industry who are treating people in their practice just like you. And you can talk about very openly without judgment. Hey, listen, I'm not doing this well, or I haven't figured out the recipe. Like, what do you guys do and how do you like it? How does it work for you? So I started, kind of talking with other people. And Erin was one of the ones who was like, hey, you need to kind of reverse it up a little bit. Here's how I do mine. And she actually changed it up. She uses the 590 first, which is a little bit deeper of a filter. So it's a little bit more comfortable superficially. It's still going to get really nice sebaceous management where you're kind of calming down the sebaceous glands a little bit. It's going to be great for deeper cystic acne at helping clear that up. And then she goes on to use her 560 and her 420. And so similar to our other treatments, and this made sense in my head because for all of the other protocols we use on BBL, we go from bottom to top, right? We start low and then we go high. Forever Clear was the only one they had that started out superficial and then went deeper. So this made sense to my head, but also it was so much more comfortable to start with that 590. I then moved to the 560 from there, and I don't necessarily utilize, and I'll say that with the 590 now, we're using hero passes.
Okay.
So
And I was going to say, were you using, so you don't do skin tight at all. You're just doing hero passes with the 590.
the 590.
And before you had hero, were you using the 590 as 590 ST, or were you using 590 as just a 590 filter at, were you doing passes to shut down reds, or were you really just trying to deliver that heat deep, like a stamping mode of skin tight?
I was really just trying to deliver deep heat. I wasn't, too caught up on the settings. A lot of times it was something like 8 or 9 with a pulse width of, I would say 15 to 30, somewhere in there, depending on their skin color and their Fitzpatrick skin type and what they tolerated. For the lower Fitzpatrick skin types, I could increase my pulse width a little bit and deliver it faster. And they tolerated that beautifully. And I kept the temperature high. It was always at, 20 to 22, because again, I really just wanted that bulk heat of the skin. And patients tolerated it beautifully. They were like, oh, I thought this was going to be, painful, but this is fine. I'm tolerating it just fine. So,
and so at that time, did you have skin tight?
We did. Yes.
Okay. I was just curious. Because all these devices are built differently. Some of the clinics have it, some don't, some have hero, some don't. So that's why I'm asking you all the details.
Yes, absolutely. So, and we will still do skin tight at the end for certain folks. And most of the time, it's those that have generalized inflammatory skin lesions, or they have what I call athlete's acne, where they have those teeny tiny little bumps everywhere that never come up to a head, where they're sweating and they're rubbing, and then that skin just kind of hangs out there, and it's all your body. So your body has no desire to spit it out anywhere. And so they get very frustrated because they're like, these never come to a head, but they're textured. And so it looks odd with makeup on. So we get that a lot. So I feel like skin tight is really best saved for the very end for those types of patients that just have, kind of a lot of redness, a lot of superficial stuff going on, or they have those little bumps. So we start out initially with that 590. It used to be stamping. Now it's hero passes. Usually I'm somewhere between 5 and 6 with a pulse width of somewhere between 8 and 10. We don't do that pulse width of 3 on it. We're usually somewhere between 8 and 10, and then we keep that temperature still a little bit more elevated.
Is there a reason why you increase the pulse width? Just kind of naturally on your own? Yeah.
It's comfort. Yeah. I mean,
it gets spicy. I love how they came out with Hero and they're like, it's not going to hurt. I'm like, that hurts. It hurts just as much as regular BBL. Just call it for what it is. We're not afraid of it, but we just going to manage the pain. And that's just how it goes. Hero is spicy. I mean, the setting of course makes a difference, but so I was just curious why you chose that.
Yeah, it's mainly for comfort because again, you have that person in your chair the first time, and if it's uncomfortable, that's their first experience with you and usually your clinic and your employees, and you don't want that to be a bad one. So you don't want them to have
question with that first step. Are you doing the full crystal or the square?
Full crystal on cheeks. Mm-hmm. And then I transition to the square for forehead, nose, and upper lip and chin. And I'm usually increasing my jewels by about 1. Usually it's 1. Occasionally I'll, if those are their sebaceous areas, like teenagers tend to have that T-zone oiliness. If they have that and they can tolerate going up 2 jewels, I'll go up 2 with them and get that square adapter on with the square adapter smoothie and just kind of go across and do the 3 passes. I like to try to get as much done with the large sapphire as I can, just for, kind of being, I would say, timely with it, getting it, I hate to say done and over with faster, but, ramping it up a little bit quicker.
You let them hold the Zimmer.
Yes, I do let them hold the Zimmer. And I got to tell you, half the time the Zimmer's on me.
Yeah, like they're holding it. Great, right?
I'm okay with it. I'm like, oh, it's warm in here. This is awesome. Thank you so much for holding my fan for me. But I think it gives them a sense of control over something, and it gives them a distraction, so they're more comfortable with that. So hey, if that is a good position for my Zimmer chiller, we'll do that all day long. Not a problem. So they usually tolerate though that first filter and those first passes really well. I will move on to the 560 after that. And if they have, again, a lot of inflammation and a lot of redness, I'm using that large sapphire and going over as much of the skin as I can, usually at a default rosacea setting.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I love that default rosacea setting because I can tell my, new providers of BBL, hey, this is going to be a great setting for you if someone has that generalized erythema and, has more superficial acne. So they go over and usually do 1 to 2 passes. Again, I'm really looking more for skin reaction than anything because we've already dumped a bunch of heat in their skin.
Right. They're already red too from the acne usually. So it's going to be warmer anyway.
It is. And so I usually, as I'm changing out filters, I just let them breathe for a second. I tell them, take that Zimmer chiller, go ahead and, kind of fan yourself with it. I, touch up their gel, change out my filter, do, different things like that. And then I'll go back over with that little bit lower of a setting for 560 at the rosacea setting. And we get great results with that. Even, I mean, you can see even after those hero passes and after each kind of setting that you do, you can see improvement in the skin, which is great. I love doing that because you can see it. And then the last thing that we do is we spot treat active breakouts or active cysts with the 420.
Okay. So with the rosacea setting, so, if you push Fitzpatrick 1, 2 for the face, rosacea, it comes up with 14, 20, 20 with the 560 filter. Does that sound pretty like what you're doing? And then 3 4s is 12, 20, 20. Okay. And so then you're treating the cheeks with that full crystal. And then when you put the square on to treat the forehead, the nose, the upper lip, and the chin, you may adjust it by a jewel or 2, or do you just keep it at that 12, 20, 20 or 14, 20, 20?
I usually do a test spot first. I want to see how they tolerate, first of all, that setting. And then I want to see how, if their skin's really pink, I may go down a couple joules
Okay.
and
Yeah.
start out at maybe 10
Hmm.
and kind of see where they go from there. But I do a test spot just to see how they do because it's a little bit snappy, right? They've had the 590, which is like a day at the spa, like no big deal. Like it's not uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden it's like the
Like, oh,
560.
this is
Ooh.
easy. Oh, wait.
Wait, time out. Did I sign up for this? So, I do a test spot first because I want them to feel it. And I also want to see how red their skin is right now versus how red it becomes then with that setting. So this is one of those things where I really use that rosacea setting as a jumping off point, but it's not the be all end all.
Okay.
So I want to see the reaction of the skin at that point, and I'll adjust up or down accordingly. I'm almost always adjusting down. I'll say
Okay.
that. I'm almost
That's
never adjusting
Which
upwards.
is interesting because, with treating rosacea, I almost always end up adjusting up, but it's a different
Correct.
condition, a different step in the treatment, a different way to use it. But that same button is the rosacea button on the device. It's like you don't have to just use it for rosacea. And I
Right.
love that because I always tell people, I'm like, don't get stuck in the buttons. Like, understand why they're telling you this is where to start, and then kind of get outside the buttons. One of the other things I found to be helpful for discomfort is, especially on my teenagers, is going from that full crystal to the square. And maybe I go from 10 to 11 joules or 12 to 13 joules or something like that. But, that large crystal, that comes with a kick.
It does come with a kick. From personal experience, that comes with a kick.
Yeah. So, all right. So 420, your 420 step. So you mentioned you go into the 420, and then do you just do one pass? Do you do multiple passes with the 420? How does that look?
Normally, I'm doing one pass. I'm, using the 11 millimeter circle adapter, and I'm just going after those areas that are broken out or that are more cystic and nodular and erythematous. And I want to treat that entire area around it. Um, and I take a look again, after one pass, take my goggles off, let the skin, hang out for a second and see if there's anywhere I missed. Normally, I would say at one pass with that 420, we've gotten beautiful results. And it feels very good to tell a patient before they leave, listen, you're going to see some change to your skin tomorrow. It might be small, it might be a 10% improvement in redness only, and that's okay. But you're going to see something tomorrow. Because I think the other thing with acne is that everything takes time with acne. So if you get on a topical that your dermatologist prescribes, it takes 3 months to see the start of improvement. Almost anything that you do with acne, everyone says, oh, it gets worse before it gets better. And by the way, it's going to take forever. So to get these acne patients in and to be able to tell them very confidently, hey, by the way, tomorrow you're going to see something. I want to see a picture of you tomorrow. Send us a picture, email me. I want to see what your face is looking like tomorrow. And I want you to tell me how you're feeling. So you have that touch point with them the next day, where if they were disappointed in the treatment or if they were excited about the treatment, they have a way to tell you about that. And it helps you kind of with your settings in the future as well. So a lot of times I'll make a note based off of the picture that they send me the next day as to how we're going to adjust. A great amount of the time, it's, patient or mom saying, oh my gosh, we saw a difference right away, which is wonderful. If they do tend to be more red, I would say sometimes I'll also clear silk.
Yeah. Love
And
it.
that, so we'll do BBL first, and then we'll do a little bit of clear silk with them afterwards. Again, I do let them cool down a little bit. I know that bulk heating is the name of the game, but for comfort purposes, we just kind of let the skin hang out for a second before, because usually we have to switch rooms for that anyways. And so that's one of those factors that has really changed how we treat acne, just because we know we can shut down some of those deeper reds. I think that it helps shrink up some of those deeper cysts as well. Not that the 590 doesn't do a great job of getting to those, but just doing that extra pass. So we've almost replaced skin tight with clear silk.
Yeah, I love that idea. And for those of you that don't have clear silk's an Nd:YAG, so it's a 1064 wavelength. And Sciton came out with it in the last year or so. But before that, they had a treatment called photo revelation. And for those clinics that had a 1064, it was very common that they didn't even know that they had this treatment. I mean, they would use the 1064 for hair removal or for spider veins, but they didn't realize they had this other little spot handpiece that they could put on to do this even distribution of energy to just create this bulk heating. And so Cyton has done a great job of coming out with a new handpiece that reads skin tint back and kind of helps us to know how much energy, and they change spot size and things like that. But I've always loved that for the cystic acne, that, something you just know you've got to get deeper. And by layering on that wavelength that naturally gets absorbed deeper in the skin, it just makes such a beautiful impact.
It does. It really does. And I feel like if I don't do something to create an improvement in their skin that they can see the next day, they probably won't come back, because it's going to be one more thing that they spent money on that they didn't see a result with.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times these folks have spent hundreds, thousands of dollars on things from Sephora and Ulta and Proactive and Roden and Fields and all of these, different MLMs and different companies that make skincare products. And they'll see a bit of a temporary improvement and then they flare after that. So I wanted to make sure that we had a protocol in our office that they could see that improvement. And a lot of times with those two together, we're seeing great results. I will say, from there, a lot of times we're integrating additional treatments in there as well. Every so often you have someone who wasn't great with face washing. Again, I'm not trying to throw teenage boys under the bus, but I have one. So I know what that looks like. And so, we'll put a diamond glow in there as well. Like, hey, you know what, next treatment you have, we're going to do a diamond glow, and just really kind of power wash the pores, get some of those blackheads out, get some extractions done, kind of get that dead, crusty top layer off the skin. And then at the end, after we finish our series of Forever Clears, I love just doing a quick nano peel over them at the last treatment. So we'll do the Forever Clear and then we do the nano peel in the same day. And they just look so bright and even. And they get that little bit of a peeling process like day 2, 3 afterwards. And when they come back, they're happy with their skin. They're absorbing their retinols well. They're absorbing their moisturizer well. And they're excited. They're excited because they see something significant in 6 to 8 treatments, and we can do those weekly. That's the really nice thing about it.
I was going to ask you. So you are doing them weekly. So 6 to 8 treatments once a week. Yes, all day long. And I think some people are like, no, I can't do BBL unless it's been 30 days. I'm like, well, what are you treating?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, we do them weekly.
And with the nano pill, have you ever had a client that it caused breakout?
When we're using it in that way, no. But usually if they're having a breakout from nano peel, it's because they've been using something occlusive immediately after, because a lot of times, and we've been guilty of this, here's the whole, learn from my mistakes in my practice moment. A nano peel is not the same as a micro laser peel, is not the same as deep contour TRL resurfacing. So a lot of times practices want to have one post-care sheet that they can just give to everybody. And so we've been guilty of that before, where it's like, okay, here is your post-care for that wavelength. It's not all the same. They don't necessarily need a barrier cream after nano peel, in our opinion. We put
so what are you using?
We put nectar on, and then we say, okay, let the heat kind of dissipate a little bit. Later on this afternoon, go ahead and put some sickle fate on, or some CeraVe cream. And they do very well with that. They don't need that full barrier support with a nano peel. You're not getting down past the stratum corneum. So we have altered a little bit, kind of the depths at which we're working and what the post-care looks like after that. So we did get breakouts initially, and it's because all the post-care was the same for, here you go, here's your 2940 post-care, and they were using an occlusive barrier. So they did get some
great tip. That is a great tip. I love that, because I think that is very common, that it's just like, especially for anybody that doesn't break out, it's easy to just throw the same kit together, but it's for those people that have that history of active acne and they tend to break out from everything. It's just going to cause the breakout.
Yeah. And we're not afraid to put them on some doxycycline for a little bit, just to mitigate that purge that sometimes happens. I mean, I haven't had, significant active break. Right. I'm going to knock on something right now. I
Ah,
haven't had significant active breakouts in a long time, but if I'm going to do Halo, I know that I'm going to purge a little bit. So I'll go on 2 weeks of Doxy, and it really helps, I think, significantly.
and what is your dose for that generally?
I like 100 milligrams BID if I'm doing it just for 2 weeks, kind of giving them a burst of antimicrobial action. And then if we're doing it for acne, for regular acne, sometimes it's once a day. It depends on what their stomach can tolerate. Sometimes
Mhm. Okay.
we love to get that twice a day dose in, but if they can only do one, we have them take it with food. It'll say on the bottle, take on an empty stomach. I always say that bottle's lying to you. Don't take this on an empty stomach. You'll be miserable.
Oh, I just thank you so much for going through all of that. That is just such a huge help. And I think, we'll put together some good verbiage below and in the podcast. So we'll include the step by step and settings and all of those things so that our listeners will have access to that. Because I think there were so many great tips in that, that have come from where you started and then just making it work based on the success or failures that you had with it. And all the technology that we get, like it has to start somewhere and then we figure out how to use it from there.
Absolutely. That's the most fun, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is the most fun. Okay. So I think maybe, I know I would kind of, oh, actually I have one more question about that. What do you charge per treatment for your Forever Clears? And do you
So
have like a package price?
we try to do them in a package. So the same patient who is seeing us for anti-aging is usually not the same patient we have for acne. Occasionally they overlap. Most of the time we're seeing teenagers, college students, that don't necessarily have the means to do our, kind of forever young protocol prices. So what we like to do is we like to package it. We don't really, I don't know, we don't agree with just doing one and then that's it, because you're not
Yeah.
going to get the same results from one that you're going to get from a series of 8. So most of the time it breaks down to about $200 a treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can kind of do the rest a la carte. So if they want to throw in a diamond glow in there, or if they want to do an nano peel, they can just add those on, kind of accordingly. But what it does is it breaks down into about $200 a treatment, and we package that up. And if they want to do the package that day, we always give a 15% discount. So
Okay.
it's a little bit more affordable for that patient. But again, we don't do them in singular treatments because they're going to do one and then they're going to come back and be like, oh, it didn't fix my acne.
Right.
Well, it didn't do the series, right? I think that's so hard for people to wrap their head around. And it's like, I understand what you're talking about, but this is a multi-step process. So a lot of times we say, this is one treatment. This is the Forever Clear treatment, and it's broken down into 8 appointments.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And I think they understand that a little bit better.
Definitely. It makes me want to rethink how we've got it on our menu of services because I'll say this is a treatment done in a series of 6 visits. But if it's not written that way on the menu of services, then they're like, well, wait, can I just pay $250 per visit? It's like, no. Then you won't make the commitment. I know this trick. I know this trick. All right. So just to kind of finish up, any words of advice for someone just getting started in this industry? Kind of thinking back to when you got started, anything that was just like really beneficial or helpful for you?
I think the one thing I'm really glad that I did was invest in my training. I think that if you're starting out in this business, you are the best investment that you can make. I tell people that all the time. The training is expensive. Everything in aesthetics is expensive. It's unfortunate, but when you are well trained and you're getting great results with patients, that's going to pay back in dividends. So one of the things that I'm very glad that I did was push for the investment in training on the front end of things and getting some really good experience. I came from plastics, derm, and burn. So I was working with burn patients for so long. And so that was an easy transition to laser because we're creating isolated, very controlled burns to the skin. That was easy for me. But some of the injectables and different things with that, It just took, it took a little bit. It took for me to treat several people before I understood what my choreography looked like and that I was comfortable with what I was doing. So I always tell people this isn't something that you can just take a weekend course and then hang your shingle. It's an investment. So make sure that when you're doing that initial business loan, you create a portion of that for yourself for your training, and then do that training as close to when you're opening your doors as you can so that it's fresh in your mind.
I love it. We buy all this equipment, and so many clinics I work with, they think that the manufacturer is going to be responsible for providing the training. And I don't know where that comes from, but it just doesn't happen, So, I mean, we are a training facility and we invest $50,000 a year in additional training every
Yep.
year. I think. And so whenever I work with clinics, I'm like, to your point, you have a budget for equipment, you have to budget money for training for yourself. And then as you grow, it's just, you will grow so much faster if you will just do the training in the beginning, commit to it, make the investment and stick with it. And to your point, it will pay forward for years and years to come.
I would agree with that. I think that that's a ubiquitous thought process out there, is that the manufacturer is going to teach me how to use this machine. They'll teach you how to turn it on and they'll give you the protocols for safe care. But that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get amazing clinical endpoints with that.
Right.
So that's what really takes the time. And that should be part of your value proposition, is that you get beautiful results. And I will say that that is the best kind of piece of advice that I can give as well, is get great results, because they can go anywhere in your town. And there's going to be many, many folks that are doing similar treatments to what you're doing. But when word gets out that you're getting the best results and people are having excellent outcomes and great experiences with you, that's worth its weight in gold.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Erin Hennessey with Blush Aesthetics, so much for coming on today and sharing your expertise, giving all those tips. And really, I mean, I'm so excited to put this content together and get it out there, because this is a piece that so many people don't have in their clinic, and something that we can do for our clients that, to your point, like there's no medication involved with the Forever Clear. There's results that happen so quickly. There's so much that we can do with that procedure. And then also just sharing your words of wisdom, having been in this industry for 5 years. So thanks again. And thanks for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to the making of a multi-million-dollar med spa podcast. For helpful links and more information about any of the Mint training tools and resources mentioned in today's episode, be sure to visit mintaesthetics.com/podcast.